So before we get into the main topic for today, which is vectors, okay, we are going to talk a little bit about the subject of physics itself in general and how vectors fits in as a result of that. So if you talk about physics, okay, what is the subject about? Okay, what do we study in physics? What type of ideas, concepts, relations, systems, etc. are studied within physics? Okay, what are the different areas of physics? Etc. If we explore some questions like this, then we have a better understanding of why we are studying vectors in the first place. So to answer the first question, what is the subject really about? This question. The answer is, in a very simple way, we could relate the answer is that physics is about everything really. Okay. Physics is about everything, but that would be a very common everyday way of saying it. So more specific thing, rather than saying it is about everything, is to understand which part of everything we mean by it. Okay, so we mean that everything to do with physical phenomena. Okay, in the universe. So this small little technical term here becomes very important. That physics deals with everything, but everything that comes within the category of what we call physical phenomena. So physical phenomena का मतलब क्या है? Let's understand that aspect next. So what are physical phenomena? Let's understand that. Okay, so physical phenomena. So the term phenomenon. Okay, that's the singular, or the plural of it is phenomena. Okay, it's nothing but an event. Okay, a phenomena is an event or an occurrence. Okay, or something that happens. That's called a phenomena. But in the case of physical phenomena, okay, physical phenomena are phenomena wherein physical quantities interact with each other or affect each other. So any sort of occurrence or any sort of event where different physical quantities are interacting with each other. Okay, whether we are talking about, a cylinder rolling down an inclined plane. So you can see that the gravitational force acting on the cylinder, the normal reaction acting on it, the friction acting from the surface, all these different physical quantities are interacting with each other in creating that particular physical phenomena. And as the cylinder is rolling, it is developing velocity. So its momentum is changing. Its acceleration might be changing. Its acceleration may be constant, whatever. So there are all different physical quantities which are involved in that particular event or in that particular phenomena, and they're all affecting each other or they're interacting with each other in a certain way. So such an occurrence is called, or such a phenomena is called a physical phenomena. Okay, so that is the meaning of the term physical phenomena. And when I say that physics deals with everything, okay, what I broadly means is it talks about every physical phenomena. Physics deals literally with any and every physical phenomena that you can see in the universe around you. from the tiniest of such phenomena to the largest of such things which occur. Okay, everything in between is dealt with physics. So that's what we mean by saying that physics is a very wide subject. Okay. So physical quantities interacting with each other. Let's understand some examples. Okay. So for example, we can have something like an okay. Okay. In vehicles, okay, manufacturing, etc. The different kind of situations we have such internal combustion engines. So what is happening in an internal combustion engine is very much an example of a physical phenomena, because there is conversion of energy from one form to the other. So some kind of chemical potential energy which is in the fuel in the form of coal or fossil fuel, petroleum or whatever, that chemical energy is getting released through a combustion process. So combustion or burning of fuel itself is a physical phenomena, wherein energy is released because of a certain set of chemical processes that happen with respect to uh, a certain chemical material or a certain chemical set of molecules like petroleum fuel or coal or whatever. Okay, so that itself is a physical phenomena. But further in the internal combustion engine, what happens is that the heat released or the heat energy released from the combustion process is then converted into mechanical energy. So the role of the internal combustion engine is to convert one form of energy to another. So the chemical potential energy stored in the fuel is first converted into heat through the process of combustion, and then through another process, okay, which we will talk about in at a later stage in physics in a lot of detail, which is the thermodynamic process. You might have heard of the subject called thermodynamics within physics. It's something that's going to come up towards the end of our class 11 physics. So through a thermodynamic physics, through a thermodynamical physical process, what happens is that you might have heard in internal combustion engines there is something called a cylinder. In fact, there are multiple cylinders. So you would have heard the term two-stroke engine or two-cylinder engines, four-cylinder engines, six-cylinder engines, etc. So typically, passenger vehicles have either three or four-cylinder engines. Okay, larger vehicles, uh, public transport vehicles, etc., might have four, six, or even 12-cylinder engines, depending on the kind of weight to power ratio involved for the engine. So anyway, what happens inside the cylinder of a combustion engine is again another physical process. Another process in physics is happening wherein the heat released from the combustion, okay, from the sparking of the fuel, there is heat released from that combustion, and that heat is ultimately utilized in pushing a piston back and forth. So that back and forth motion of the piston, that kinetic energy that it's getting, the piston, that is coming ultimately from the heat energy that is released from the combustion. And finally, through a gear wheel system and a drivetrain system, that back and forth, forward and backward kind of motion of the piston, that is converted into rotational motion of the wheels. So there are a lot of physical events and a lot of physical systems one after the other which are in place in the process of internal combustion engine. But I'm taking the example just to explain to you why the internal combustion engine itself can be can be uh, classified as an example of what is a physical phenomena. It's not a natural phenomena because internal combustion engine is man-made, but it is an artificial phenomena created by man, but very much it comes in the category of physical phenomena because there are different physical quantities which are interacting with each other. Okay. So what happens in the internal combustion engine, as we were discussing, is that physical quantities interact, okay, or affect each other. Okay, to create energy conversion. Energy conversion. Okay, that is chemical potential energy stored in a fuel. Okay, is converted to So we have from chemical potential energy in the fuel. So we have a conversion from that to heat, okay, by combustion, okay, and that is converted to mechanical energy by what we call a thermodynamic process. Okay, so all this involves different physical quantities interacting with each other to create change. Okay, the universe is always changing. It's a constant process of one thing evolving to another. Okay, so that comes within the subject of physics. That comes very much within the subject of physics because it's physical phenomena. Okay, now this is an example of a artificial physical phenomena. Now you can also have so many examples of natural physical phenomena. Okay, so for example, you take the everyday phenomena of the moon orbiting the earth. Okay, so that is again interaction of two heavenly bodies just a minute, people. Yeah, system just got hanged in between. So it is the interaction of two heavenly bodies, which is planet Earth and its so-called satellite moon, but they are interacting via gravitational force. So gravitational forces between them is creating the interaction. Okay, and that is creating the change. That is the orbital motion of the moon, which has a fixed time period. Okay, it has a fixed amount of mechanical energy, etc. So again, you can appreciate that these are all physical phenomena. Okay, so many examples of physical phenomena, but to understand what is not a physical phenomena, for example, now if you talk about watches a very sentimental movie, okay, so that affects his or her emotions. Okay, causes the person to either become sad or even cry, etc. So again, you can see that these are not physical phenomena. Okay, this is an emotional phenomena. Okay, it's not physical. Okay, this is a physiological change. Okay, so it's to do with the nervous system. So all this is not in the scope of physics. That would be in the scope of some other subject. Okay, so that's what we mean by saying that physics does deal with everything, but by everything we mean everything which is within the scope of physical phenomena, where physical quantities are interacting with each other. No, Hitanshu, you don't have to write all this. I have told you many times before, also in other lectures also, that I will tell you when and what to write. Okay, we haven't started with the topic of vectors yet. We are just looking at an introduction into the subject of physics, what it is about, etc. And I will be providing you with the notes. I just told you in the beginning of the lecture also that I provide you with the whiteboard notes. So I don't expect you to write everything in detail. What I expect is that when we are solving questions, when I'm asking you to solve something or write down a formula in detail, etc., at that point of time, you do the pen work. During the lecture, you concentrate more on understanding the lecture and discuss with me if there are any questions, any doubts, etc. Yeah, Sneha, so you want me to explain this last example or the internal combustion engine example? Sneha, you want me to explain this particular example of the non-physical phenomena or the previous one? Previous one, okay. So the previous one, see why it is a physical phenomena, because in the previous one we are talking about the orbital motion of the moon around the earth. Okay, so what are the physical quantities? I mean, what kind of change is occurring there? Okay, so if this is, let's say, the earth, like a giant sphere, and this is the moon, so it's involved in some kind of a circular orbit like this. So it has a velocity, it has a momentum, and that keeps changing. Its position keeps changing. But what keeps it bound to the earth? Okay, why it doesn't? Because of its property of inertia, it should want to continue in this state of uniform motion. But why it turns? Why it goes from this to this now? So for that, there must be some kind of interaction involved. There must be some kind of force involved. So you might have heard of the term centripetal force. To keep anything in a circular motion or to keep anything turning, we need something called centripetal force. So in this particular case of the orbital motion of a satellite around a planet, what is the agent of that centripetal force, or which physical phenomena is responsible for that centripetal force which causes the orbital motion to occur? It is nothing but the gravitational interaction. Okay, so just like in chemistry, you might be studying about, you know, atomic structure where electrons are orbiting around the nucleus. So there also you have some kind of centripetal force. So in this case, what is that centripetal force? It is nothing but the gravitational attraction. So the force which is responsible for this constant going round and round, and the force which is responsible for keeping the object, in this case the moon, bound to that circular orbit, so that it does not, you know, escape that orbit and go away to infinity, in the tendency to continue in a state of inertia. So that force which is responsible for that, or that form of interaction, is nothing but the gravitational interaction. And that is why it comes in the category of forces which are affecting each other. Now, how much gravitational pull the earth has, that depends on the mass of the earth, it depends on the mass of the moon. So the gravitational pull between the earth and moon, for example, has a different value compared to the gravitational pull between Saturn and one of its one of the asteroids within its ring, or Jupiter and one of its moons. It will have a different value of force, because the force of interaction itself will depend on other physical quantities, like the masses of the planets and satellites involved, the the orbital height of the satellite, etc. So in a system like this, where we're talking about a natural satellite going around a planet, again we are dealing with physical phenomena. Hence it comes within the subject of physics. Okay, so hope it is clear now. Very good. Whereas if you look at the next example which we had seen, just a minute, I will reshare the board, people. Okay, you just have to switch on the whiteboard again. Yeah, just give me a minute. Whereas the one example I took of the non-physical quantity, okay, that was just to explain to you that how there can be a situation where there is some change occurring, but that change does not involve physical quantities interacting with each other. It involves some other type of quantities. So that kind of a phenomena will not come in the category of physics. So while it's correct to say physics deals with everything, but it deals with everything as long as they are within the physical domain. If something is dealing with emotional changes, it is dealing with physiological changes, things that are not described by physical quantities, but by different kind of quantities compared to physical quantities, then matlab, that doesn't come within the subject of physics. So that was the only point of explaining this, actually, nothing more than that. It's not like, you have to know any definition within this, etc. This is just a general discussion. Okay, now moving on. So since we are talking about physical quantities, okay, then further we have to know technically what we mean by the term physical quantity, how we can say a given quantity is physical or not. So what is the proper definition of the term physical quantity? Can any of you send me a message and explain to me what is a physical quantity? When can I say a certain quantity is physical and when I can say it is non-physical? How would I check that a given quantity is physical quantity or not? Like if I ask you volume or velocity or density or something like this, you all know that they are physical quantities. Whereas if I ask you, what is your let us say if I ask you that what is your happiness quotient right now, so you know that that's not a physical quantity, it's some other type of quantity. Okay, so how do I know what is physical and what is not physical? Yes, very good, Hitanshu, you got the correct answer. Exactly, Elvis, that's correct. Okay, so physical quantity is nothing but a quantity that can be measured. Correct. Dovita, your answer is also correct. So you people have understood this. So anything that can be measured or that can be defined by a process of measurement, that is, that is called. So how we measure by comparison. So for example, if I say the volume of a room is so many meter cube, it's let's say 50 meter cube. So the comparison of that volume with a standard unit is so much. It's 50 times. If I have a standard unit which is 1 meter cube, which is a cubical box of 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter, in comparison to that, the volume of a given room is 50 times. So that process is measurement. Okay, yeah, and Doveta will come to that. So we are very much coming to the introduction to vectors. So next thing we will understand that physical quantities further can are of two types. Okay, but before that, let us write down the definition of physical quantities in the notes here. So physical quantities are quantities which can be measured. So in very simple terms, they are physical quantities. Now you should also understand the opposite of that. What is a non-physical quantity? It is something that cannot be measured. So again, that goes outside the domain of physics, okay? Because physics deals only with physical quantities. Now we come to a very subtle and important point that we will see that based on this property of measurement, we will see physical quantities can be divided into two categories, okay? One category is called vectors and the other category is called scalars. So this is in fact where our topic for today starts, vectors. Okay, this is where we are starting the technical understanding of vectors first, and from that how to deal with vectors and all that. So vectors, we will see there are certain physical quantities which if we want to express them or we want to define them or we want to give them measurement, we have to give two informations. One is the amount of the quantity or what we call the magnitude, and the other is the direction in which that quantity is acting. So for example, if we talk about force, we know that the magnitude of the force is expressed in newtons or dynes. Okay, but that is not enough information about the force. If I just tell you that there's a force of 20 newtons acting, you cannot understand वो force का effect क्या होगा, because I've not told you which direction in which it is acting. If it is acting vertically, for example, you know that that might cause the body to lift if it is more than the weight of the body. If it is acting vertically downwards, it will just push it against the ground. So the interactive force with the ground, which we call the normal reaction, that will increase. If I apply the force horizontally, then there's a possibility that it will create acceleration. But again, it depends on how much friction is available. So, without the information about direction, the definition of a force or the description of a force becomes partly meaningless. If I have only information about magnitude, it's not enough. It's partial information, which is not of 100% use to me. So force is an example of a quantity where if I define a force, I have to know two information about it. One is I have to know the amount of force, or what we call the magnitude, and the other is I have to know the direction in which the force is acting. Another example is displacement. That's also a vector quantity. Another example is velocity. Okay. Whereas now let's talk about scalar. Scalar is a quantity which does not have direction. It only has magnitude. So when we are describing a scalar quantity, or we are expressing the measurement of a scalar quantity, we just have to give one information, which is the amount of that quantity, or what we call the magnitude. So for example, if I'm expressing the mass of an object, the mass of the object does not have any direction. It does not act in a particular direction. The nature of that quantity is such that it does not have direction. It is just so much mass. Or if I express the volume, or if I express the amount of time, the duration of time taken for an event, okay, it does not have any direction. Yeah, in many sense, you will say that time always goes in the forward direction and not in the backward direction. But that is not in terms of, direction in which it's acting. Okay, time is linear. It does not act in different directions. Okay. So let's write this down now. Let's put this to paper. So vectors, they are physical quantities which have magnitude and direction, or you can say they're defined by magnitude and direction. Defined by, or you can say they are expressed by a magnitude and a direction. Okay. So for example, we can say a displacement, okay, of 200 kilometers towards north. This is the complete definition of the displacement. If I'm going for the complete definition, I must have information about the magnitude and the direction in which the displacement is happening, both the things. If one of the two informations are missing, you can see the expression of the displacement is incomplete. The information we have uh, about displacement that we'll have in that case, if one of the two informations are missing, then it's incomplete. Okay, we cannot really deal with it in a physical situation. Whereas on the other hand, scalars, they are physical quantities which are inherently such that there is no directional meaning to them. Okay, their meaning or their physical sense is only in terms of magnitude. So they are quantities that are expressed by only a magnitude. Okay, so example of this could be that volume, okay, of a cube, for example, is, let us say, 200 milliliters. Okay, now this is only a magnitude. It does not act in a particular direction. It has only magnitude. Okay, so this comes in the category of scalar, whereas this comes in the category of vectors. Okay, so this is where, as I told you, our topic of vector starts. So you can start making a brief note of this if you like, or make sure you understand this. As I told you, I'll be sending you PDF notes of this. Okay, so you can make a definition of, you can write down the definition of vectors over here. Okay, people, is this clear? Yeah, Hitanshu, you are asking, uh, is kinematics and vectors related in terms of physics? Yeah, they are related in the sense that a lot of physical quantities in kinematics, a lot of definitions like displacement, velocity, acceleration, etc., are in fact vector quantities. Now, you have obviously started with what is called one-dimensional kinematics, or motion along a straight line. So there we need not express the physical quantities as vectors. But the moment you look happening in a general three-dimensional space, or is happening in a two-dimensional, so vectors will very very much we applied in Newton's laws of motion, which deals with forces. Right. So once again, I mean, because of internet connectivity, some part is not clear to you, then you can please, I mean, rely on the recording later. I'm recording the lecture and the audio is clear in the recording, so don't worry about that. Okay. With monsoon weather conditions and all, different people have different internet speeds, and there are internet dropouts happening everywhere. So some of you from point time to time will not receive the signal correctly. Okay. So let's understand this with a little bit more of a physical example. So in my next example, okay, I'm taking volume. Okay. So what is happening? Time t equal to 12 p.m. Let's say the bucket is empty. Okay. Then 12:02 p.m. Okay. Let's say we have filled some water in the bucket. So there is okay. So between here and here, 500 meters milliliters of water is poured, and then by the time it's 5 past 12, okay, let us say, now going from this to this information is given to me that between 2 minutes past 12, okay, 600 milliliters of water was poured into the bucket. Okay. So now if I ask you that at this point of time, what is the new volume? Right. At this point of time, the volume was this much. Okay, this was at. Okay. So, I mean, you'll say what kind of question this is. This is very simple. The volume at 12:05 would be nothing but the sum of the original volume at 12:02 plus the additional volume that we've added. So how much that will become? Yes, very good. So that volume should simply become 1100. There's no doubt about that. It's a very simple situation that just that much extra volume is added. So you just use normal algebra to add the original volume, which was so much, 500 milliliters, with the additional volume that we've added. So the final volume will just become the initial volume plus the additional volume we've added. So let's say that's delta V. So that's 500 plus 600. So it's a very simple relation. There's nothing difficult about it. Okay. So this is going to be the final volume. But by doing this simple operation, what we would have noticed is what we have done over here is this is what we call a scalar addition. Okay. Scalar addition operation has been used here. And why that has been used? Because volume is which type of quantity? Volume is a scalar quantity. So while doing this operation, that 600 milliliters has been added to 500 milliliters. So what's the final volume? Nowhere we had to use any information about direction, and direction did not matter. Okay, we could have added the volume by pouring it from top. We could have put a pipe on the side and added the volume. We could have first removed the 500 milliliters, put 600 milliliters of water from another bucket, then again added the 500 milliliters. So direction on that did not matter. So the final volume just came by a simple arithmetic addition of the two magnitudes of 500 and 600. So in other words, the operation that was done over here was scalar addition. Why? Because the physical quantity involved was a scalar quantity. Okay. Now let's look at my next example, or within this example, let's look at the second case. Okay. Now case 2, I'm going to talk about displacement instead of volume. Okay. And remember, displacement is a vector quantity, because how is displacement defined? It is defined as the straight line path length, but the straight line path length, not the direct path length, from the initial position to the final position. Okay, so that is the quantity of displacement, as you know from kinematics. Okay. Now in my example, if I tell you, suppose okay, yeah, don't worry about that. Concentrate on this example, Hidanshu. Okay. So suppose a person makes a displacement of 50 kilometers from 12 to 12:30 p.m. Okay, just a minute, guys. Okay, so the person makes a displacement of 50 kilometers from 12 to 12:30 p.m. and then follows it up with another displacement of 30 kilometers from 12:30 to 1 p.m. And now I ask you, find the total displacement okay, from 12 to 1 p.m. Now, immediately when you think about the question, you realize what the issue here is. That displacement is a vector quantity. So how will I calculate the final displacement? Just think about it and tell me. कितना होना चाहिए final displacement? No, think a little more carefully, beta. Darshan, think a little more carefully before you give the answer. And also, as a hint, I'll tell you, here we're not talking about distance traveled, we're talking about displacement. We're talking about displacement. Okay. Okay, Dhruv, you're thinking in the right direction, but exactly, we can't say it's one or the other of two, no? There can be so many other displacements in between. Hitanshu, the question is on the board, beta. It's right. So then there's a problem with your internet connection. Just reconnect, you will get it back. Okay, so what most of you are correctly concluding here is that with the information given, jitna information मैंने यहाँ दिया हुआ है, from that I in fact cannot calculate displacement. Okay, the correct answer to this is the net displacement cannot be calculated without information about direction. Without directions. So it simply cannot be calculated. Why? Because displacement is a vector quantity. So it has to be defined by magnitude and direction. अगर मुझे दोनों चीज नहीं पता है, मैग्नीट्यूड एंड डायरेक्शन, तो मुझे डिस्प्लेसमेंट पता ही नहीं है. So basically what is happening in this example is that this displacement, I don't know how much the displacement is because I don't know what the direction is. I only don't know the magnitude. Yeah. Similarly, the second displacement, I don't know what the displacement is because the direction is missing. Same reason. I don't know what the direction is. Okay. So that is why this cannot be calculated. Okay. But as opposed to this, now let's come to a third example. Suppose I give you information about direction. Then you will see what a significant role that plays, that information about direction. Okay. Now suppose, yeah, just a minute. I'm coming to your doubt. Yes, Aditi, your conclusion is correct. If we are doing any sort of calculation to do with displacement, whether we are adding two displacements or subtracting, if we don't have information about direction, we cannot proceed. In the question, we have to have information about both. Okay. So now you'll understand with my next example. I mean, in the next case in this example. So case 3 is again something where displacements are given, but they are given properly with direction. Okay. So now it is said S1 is a displacement of 40 kilometers towards east direction. Okay. And then S2 is a displacement of 30 kilometers towards south. Okay. Now a person makes the displacement of S1 followed by S2. So what is his or her net displacement? Okay. Now you will see, if you visualize this situation, just try to draw a diagram to understand this. And in the diagram, take your x-axis as the east direction and your y-axis as the north direction. So the moment you visualize it, it will become clear to you how much the net displacement is. So I'm waiting for your answers. Yes, correct. Shushant, Ayush, that's correct. Very good. So you can see why you are able to definitely say कि इतना ही होगा, because you know the direction. Na? So you have that definite understanding. The definition of the two displacements S1 and S2 is 100% clear to you. Okay. Yes, Hitanshu, correct. Okay, so waiting for the answers from others. And in the meantime, I'm just minimizing this a little so that you can see both the examples together, understand the contrast between them. Okay. So just go through both of these examples together, and sooner or later you'll understand the point that I'm trying to make here. कि अगर मैं displacement से related कुछ भी calculation कर रहा हूँ, then I have to have information about direction. The information about magnitude only is not enough. I have to have both the information, both the magnitude and the direction should be known. Only then I can do some kind of definite calculation, or I can develop some relation between two displacements and things like that. Otherwise, the information is as good as useless. Very good. So your answers are correct. All of you sent the answers so far. You got this correct. So let me explain the whole calculation once more. Yes, the correct answer will be 50 kilometers. Okay. So let us understand this with a sort of a diagram. So suppose I've decided on some kind of a, notation or some kind of a representation where I've taken this arrow pointing as north. Okay, so my y-axis is pointing towards north, negative y-axis is pointing towards south, and similarly, my x-axis is pointing towards east and is pointing towards west. Okay. Now let's understand this in detail. So let us say this point here is the starting point. So I'll define it as my origin. So पहला क्या हो रहा है, यहाँ से we are making a displacement S1 was 40 kilometers towards east. Okay, so that means that the person is reaching after completing a displacement S1, where that person is reaching or where that object is reaching, it's reaching here. Okay. So it's reaching at this point, which is at a distance of 40 kilometers, but towards the east of the starting point. Okay, but remember that object or that person is not stopping over there. Now they're making the second displacement, which is 30 kilometers towards south. So where they are starting the second displacement from this point, not from this point. Okay, so the second displacement is, now remember I'm not drawing an exact figure, so I'm not measured this, and so I'm just making an arbitrary figure. I'm assuming that this represents 40 kilometers. So now I will represent 30 kilometers with a slightly shorter line, but it should be in the perfectly perpendicular direction. So I'm trying that also. Just give me a second, people. I have to redraw this. Okay. Okay. So this is, let's say, my second displacement. Just let's get this correct. Okay. So this was the first one. Now the second one is pointing downwards towards the south. Now you can see it's pointing towards south, and it's supposed to be 30 kilometers in length. Okay. Whereas this one was pointing towards east. It was okay. Now where is the final position where my object or person, this becomes the final position. So what we define the net displacement as, it is the straight line from initial to final position. So as per the definition of displacement, what should be the net displacement here? It should be this particular arrow now. It should be this one. Okay. This should be my so-called net displacement. Okay. Now, because this happens to be a right angle triangle, you can use Pythagoras theorem. So by Pythagoras' theorem, the magnitude of the net displacement will become square root of this here. So that will become, so it will become 50 kilometers. Okay. So my net displacement has a magnitude of 50 kilometers. I have to also give it some direction. So I'm coming to that. Okay. How we'll express the direction, I'm coming to that. Okay. But I know this much that, okay, the magnitude is 50 kilometers. Okay. Now we'll talk about the direction in little more detail just now. Just hang on. Okay. Okay. So we can see this here, it's a displacement of magnitude 50 kilometers. Now we also have to talk about the direction, which I'm coming to, but first I want you to understand this diagram in detail. Make a note of it. If you haven't done this diagram yourself, make a diagram in detail and make a note of it. Okay. So we can see that the net displacement, the conclusion so far is that the net displacement is of magnitude 50 kilometers. Now we still have to understand its direction, which we'll come to in a moment. Okay, so I hope you're clear up to this point, everyone. Okay. Now what about the direction? Okay. What about the direction of the net displacement? So for that, we have to look at that triangle in a little bit more detail. And we have to understand from trigonometry actually. Okay. Pardon. Just a moment. Okay. Just a moment, people. Something wrong with my software. Yeah, I'll scroll up and show you, but let me make this diagram and explain the diagram once, the direction once more first. Okay. Just hang on, people. I'll start that whiteboard again. Just wait a minute. Okay. I'm sharing that page again. Yeah, so talking about the direction, let's look at that particular right angle triangle we had solved in a little more detail. Okay. The color coding has changed, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so this is the direction towards south, and this is 30 kilometers, whereas this was the direction towards east, and this was 40 kilometers. So in the same diagram, our net displacement was the straight line from this initial position to this final position. So it was this one. Okay. So this was our so-called net displacement, and we saw that it came out to be 50 kilometers. Now, what about the direction? So you see, from this point where he's starting, this is the direction towards the south. Okay, and this is the direction towards the east. So the direction is somewhere southeast, and somewhere का मतलब क्या है? We have to specify this angle. So whatever this theta is, we will say that the direction, it is theta degrees south of east. Okay. Now the question is, how much is theta? So for that you use trigonometry. Okay. So you can see that tan theta is equal to 30 divided by 40, or 0.75. So if you use a table or you use a calculator, okay, you will see that theta will come out to be 37 degrees. This is not a standard value like 30, 45, etc., which you know. But if you use one of these standard devices, which is either a trigonometric table or a calculator, a scientific calculator, you will be able to come to the conclusion. So the proper direction now will say that the net displacement is 50 kilometers along the direction at 37 degrees south of east. So this is giving me my complete definition of net displacement. This is the net displacement properly defined. If I had just given 50 kilometers, again it's improper. It's not complete because I have information about magnitude, but not information about direction. Okay. So again, don't worry about the value of 37. As long as you're clear about this, that you're using trigonometry here, using trigonometry for this right angle triangle. So tan theta is defined, as you know, as perpendicular upon base. So in this triangle, the perpendicular is 30 kilometers and the base is 40 kilometers. So, okay, so I will just minimize this for all of you to go through in detail and also take down. Okay, so this is an important question or numerical type of example that we have solved. Okay, so we've not used any new formula or anything here. We have used everything that you know from your class 10th level, which is Pythagoras theorem and trigonometry. That combination of concepts we have asked, we have used to solve. But you can see how we have used that to solve for the net displacement, which was a new definition for us today. Okay, so just make a note of this, and I'm coming to your individual doubts. If there's any doubt in this, just drop me a message. I'll come to that. Yeah, I'll explain the direction again. Just make a note of the diagram and the application of trigonometry in that triangle. Okay, so Sneha, coming to your doubt, first of all, net displacement का definition क्या है देखो? How is the net displacement defined? It is the straight line. See, I've written down that definition over here. It is defined as the straight line from the initial position to the final position. So in my diagram here, where is the initial position? It was this starting point, which I have labeled as O. This is the initial position that the object starts from. Now from there, how the person or the object moves, it moves along this path, first going to east and then going towards south and reaches this final position. So according to the definition of displacement now, what is the net displacement? It is nothing but the straight line from the initial starting point to the final point where you come. So that's why this straight line becomes a net displacement. Now, if you compare this straight line with the other two displacements S1 and S2, you notice that they are making a right angle triangle because this is towards east and this is towards south. So this angle is 90. So because they are making a right angle triangle, now you can take advantage of Pythagoras theorem and you can calculate the net displacement to be 50. Is that clear, Sneha? Okay. Now to come to your question, okay, Darshan, Sakshi, Sirish, all of you, you have to understand. So if we are clear about the magnitude of the displacement, so मुझे अभी पता है कि मेरा starting point से ending point का जो total path length है straight line वाला वो कितना है, वो 50 kilometers है. Now the next question that is coming to my mind कि okay, this is 50 kilometers, but what about its direction? So let's concentrate on the second diagram now. So I'm just zooming into that once more. Yeah, just a moment. So the second direction becomes important for me. Yeah, so now coming to my second diagram, which is describing the direction more properly. So see where I'm starting from, this is my starting point. Okay. Now we'll come back to this diagram. Just think like this, that from my starting point, ये मेरा starting point है, this direction is the east axis. This direction is the north axis. This direction is the axis towards south. Okay. This direction is towards west. So for example, suppose I said if the displacement, oh sorry, I have not come to this sign yet. So if I say displacement is towards north, okay, suppose I said displacement SA is towards north, I know that it would be like this would be the direction. Okay, if I said that some other displacement, let's say SB is towards west, so from my starting point that displacement would be here. Okay, this is what. Now similarly, if I say I have some other displacement, now let's say I have a displacement SC which is towards, just as an example, just a moment. So just as an example, suppose I say that this is towards northeast. So how that displacement should look like, it should be like this. It should be in between north and east. Okay. And if I just say northeast, that means by default, I'm taking this angle to be 45 degrees. This is the direction of northeast. It's bisecting north to east angle of 90 degrees. So it's like that. Now, similarly, if I set another displacement, let's say I have another displacement SD, which is, suppose I say it is 30 degrees. Okay. Just a moment, guys. Okay. Now suppose I have another displacement SD, which is 30 degrees, let's say south of west. So कैसा दिखेगा? This is your direction south, but south say you are turning towards west by 30 degrees. So it should be like this. Okay, this would be SD where this angle would be 30 degrees. This is from south towards west. The angle is 30 degrees. Okay. So are these examples clear to you about directions? Okay, so just make a note of these examples of different directions. Then we'll come back to that question. This angle is 30 degrees. So this would be the direction, which is 30 degrees. Oh, sorry. It's 30 degrees south of west, not west of south. Wait a minute, people. This is a mistake. Okay. This would be like this. This is my west direction. So 30 degrees south of west. So that means west se south ke taraf 30 degrees. This would be the displacement SD. Okay. And I mean, it has to be quite different from this one because that is along the 45-degree line. So we have to understand that this is a little bit different from that. Okay. This is more like this. This angle is only 30 degrees. This angle is 45. Okay, so now with this information, now go back to the earlier diagram and you will understand यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, ठीक है? So in the earlier diagram, you can clearly see कि this is your direction towards south. This is your direction towards east. So your net displacement is at some angle with respect to east towards south. Okay, so this net displacement's direction automatically this is becoming, because this angle is some theta. Okay, so this displacement is at some theta which we don't know, but at theta degrees south of east. That is the meaning of this. Now starting from this origin point, this is east, this is south. So this is where our displacement would be, this theta. So this is theta south of east. This is how that would look. So now the next thing is we want to find how much this theta is. So how do we find that theta? We use trigonometry. So in this right angle triangle, if you apply trigonometry, you apply this concept that tan theta is perpendicular upon base. You see that theta is such an angle जिसका tan कितना है 0.75. So if you check out in a trigonometric table or if you use a scientific calculator, you'll see that which particular angle has tan theta equal to 0.75 or 3 by 4. It is nothing but 37 degrees. If you have a scientific calculator or an Android calculator in your phone or something, you can try this out. Okay, type in 37 degrees and then calculate the tan of that. It will come out to be very close to 0.75. If you round it off to second place of decimal, it will come out to be 0.75. Okay, Hitanshu, doesn't matter. Just make a note of this diagram. With more examples, it will become clear. Just make a note of this example. As we do more examples, it will become clear to you. I'm sure the trigonometry part is clear. Na? In the right angle triangle, you can see how we have calculated theta. We use this. So this must be clear to you. So just note down this part. Yeah, you can use if you want, beta. Your notebook, Dovita, is up to you how you want to make the notes. But my only point is, see, your concentration on over here in the lecture should be in understanding what I'm explaining and then doing the calculation when I'm asking you to solve something. So, don't get so worried about making perfect notes and all that, that you stop paying attention to what I'm saying and stop understanding, because the notes will be available to you later. I'll send you the PDF notes. Okay. So keep the concentration more on the understanding and the solving part. You can perfect your notes later if you want, or you can use my notes. It doesn't matter so much. Okay. So just a moment, people. We'll take a quick 2-minute recess. Okay. I just need to refresh the white screen. So just go through your notes in the meantime. Okay. If you like. Okay. So let's come back to our understanding of vectors. Okay. No, kinematics and vectors are not the same beta at all. Okay, because vectors have an application in all parts of physics. For example, vectors will be used in kinematics as much as they will be used in Newton's laws of motion when we are dealing with forces. Similarly, it will be used as much in something like electric field and magnetic field in class 12th, or gravitational field later. Okay, so vectors is basically a method of algebra or a method of dealing with mathematical quantities or physical quantities which are called vector quantities, which will be useful in entire physics, not just kinematics. Whereas kinematics is a specific branch of physics which deals with this thing, motion of bodies. So vectors, you can't really say it's a topic in physics in that sense. It is more a sort of general method of application in physics, which is used in all the topics of physics, various different topics of physics. Okay. All right. Now let's look at our next example, and this is again something for you to solve. Okay. So now the question is, in the question I'm going to give you, with respect to an XY coordinate frame, different positions, okay, or different coordinates, and you have to tell me the vector definition of displacement between them. Okay, so suppose I have drawn my XY frame such that X axis is in kilometers. Okay, so the unit of this thing in the X axis is kilometers, y-axis is also expressed in kilometers. Okay, and the y-axis is pointing north. The x-axis is pointing east. Okay, so this is the west, and this is the south direction. Okay, now I'm going to plot various points over here. So let us say this point is point E, जिसके coordinates है 30, 10. Okay, then this point says point B, जिसके coordinates हैं 70, 50. Okay, and this other point here is C, and C's coordinates are -10, 40. Okay, so you have to find the displacement in magnitude and direction from A to B. So if a body or a certain person makes a displacement from the point A to the point B, how much is their displacement in magnitude and direction? Similarly, from E to C, okay, and the third part from C to A. So just think about this carefully. Take your time over this question. If you like, go through your notes and revise the previous question. The same kind of information we'll be using here and calculate these displacements. So just try this out, people. Okay, so let me just verify your answers. Veronica, E to B, your direction is correct, but magnitude you have to be a little careful. Okay, magnitude is okay. Okay, Dhruv, unfortunately not correct. And Veronica, your A to C is correct. Okay, but you have to also express the angle. You have to give the direction in terms of the angle also. Hitanshu, not correct for the first part. Yeah, so I'll explain in detail. Don't worry. So it's, I think, a calculation mistake you made, Veronica. Anyhow, so let's look at this solution of this now. Okay. Now E is 40, 10 and B's coordinates were 70, 50. So E would be, let's say, somewhere over here. And the point B would be somewhere over here. Okay. So first of all, the displacement from A to B, where would that be in my diagram? That would be the straight line, or the shortest path from the point A to the point B. So that would be this. Okay. So this is what I could label as my displacement from A to B. So this is what I need to calculate now. So I'll again use trigonometry, or I'll use Pythagoras theorem. So if I just want to solve this geometrically, you can understand that this is 70, this is 30. Okay. And similarly, B's y coordinate is 50 and A's y coordinate is 10. So now the next interesting thing that you can see here is that this value here is nothing but 40, and it's all in kilometers, remember. And similarly, this value here is also 40. Okay. So now the question is, how much is the net displacement? So it has a magnitude of 40 root 2, which we can approximate as 40 into 1.4. Right. So approximately 56 kilometers. in magnitude. Okay, so that is the displacement from A to B. Now about the direction, you can see that this angle is 45. This is that right angle isosceles triangle. So you can see that the direction is like this. It's splitting the north and the east direction. So starting from your point A, this is the east and this direction is the north. So this is exactly splitting that. Now you can see the angle is 45 from the point A. So, and direction is along northeast. Okay. Or if you want to express it more technically, though it's not required because it's exactly along the bisector, it's 45 degrees north of east. Okay, so understood the whole process of calculation, all of you, I hope. Okay, now similarly do the calculation for C, you'll get your answers. Okay, now if you look at your point C, it was over here. C was a point here whose coordinates were minus 10, comma 40. So now for the second part, if you're talking about the displacement, AC, that is E to C. So you can see in the diagram, it's going to be this path from A to C directly, going to be this. Okay. So you're going to have to make use of combination of coordinate geometry concepts and trigonometry again. Okay. So you can see that this coordinate is 40. Okay, and this was 10. So now this is becoming how much here? This is becoming 40 minus 10 or 30. Okay. And this is minus 10. So here to here, this is becoming how much? It is 10 plus 30, or it's becoming 40. Okay. So now this is my displacement from A to C in this direction. So you can see that the displacement from A to C will become square root of 30 square plus 40 square this time. So it will be 50 kilometers. But now about direction. So let us say this angle is theta. So again, you can see that tan theta is the same 0.75. So we know from earlier today that theta is 37 degrees. Okay. So it will be at 37 degrees north of west. Okay, but if you look at that separately, from the point A, okay, this is your direction going northwards, and this is your direction going westwards. Okay, but you are going in this in between direction. So keep that in mind and solve for the direction. So you will get this answer that it is at 37 degrees north of west. But the particular displacement that we are having there in that diagram, you can see, is along this line. So it's the direction is something like this. So that direction is like this. Okay, so this is at theta equal to 37 degrees north of west. You can see from west you are going towards north by 37 degrees. So that is why the proper direction of this displacement is this. Have you understood the directions, all of you, properly? Now we'll come to C2A also, and that you'll see is very easy to understand because it's just reverse of that. तो उसका magnitude तो 50 होगा, but if this is going in the northwest sort of direction at 37, that will go in the southeast sort of direction. Now the arrow is going to point in the opposite direction because you are starting from C and going to the point A. Okay, so now you can also see that therefore SCA, that is the displacement from C to A, that will be just equal and opposite to the displacement from A to C. So equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. Okay, so that is equal in magnitude okay, so that makes it 50 kilometers but opposite in direction. Okay. Because you can see that So now you can see that the displacement will be this. It will be this arrow. It will be the arrow from the point C, but pointing towards A. ऐसा वाला. So this will be your displacement from C to A. So again, last time we had seen this angle was 37. So here this angle will be 37. But now it's in which direction? Southeast. So it will be 37 degrees south of east. Okay. So you can see that the displacement will be along the direction which is 37 degrees south of east. Okay, because that's that direction. From C, this is east, this is south, but you're going along this direction. So it's taking you towards the point E. So ये angle 37 है. So it is. So hope this is clear to all of you people. So again, compare these two diagrams. You'll understand why that angle 37 is the same, but now it's towards southeast. Okay, good. So now let's understand a few more general things about vectors before we come back to vector algebra, okay, and these type of questions. Okay, so next thing we learn today here, the last thing will be notation and symbols used for vectors. So vector is represented by any alphabet with an arrow on top of it. So this is the symbol used to represent a vector E. Okay, so that arrow on top of the symbol tells us that E represents a vector quantity. Okay. Just make a note of this. So for example, if we want to represent a vector force, we'll represent it with the symbol capital F, but we'll put an arrow on top of the symbol. So an arrow on top of the letter will tell us that the letter stands for a vector quantity. Okay. Whereas you want to represent a scalar quantity, like for example, volume, we'll represent it by V without the arrow on top. Okay. So basically an arrow on top of a letter alphabet represents the vector quantity denoted by that alphabet. Okay. So this would be read as vector D, whereas this would be represented as scalar C. No arrow on top of the symbol or no arrow on top of the letter means that that letter represents a scalar quantity, whereas a small vector arrow notation made on top of it means that it represents a vector quantity. So this is just a matter of notation, okay? So that when we write a symbol, it's clear to us whether the symbol represents a vector quantity or a scalar physical quantity. Okay. Now next up, we'll see another symbol. When we represent or when we put a vector symbol in between two bars, okay. Now in maths, two bars is called modulus, but in physics or in vector notation, it is called magnitude. So this is the magnitude of the vector E. Okay. So in other words, this symbol, it is read as magnitude of. Okay. And so we can only put a vector quantity in between it. We cannot, in vector algebra, we cannot put a scalar quantity inside it. So please note that the symbol looks same as the mod symbol in maths, but it's not mod. Here it is magnitude. Okay, so for example, you can have a question like this, that which of the following magnitude of a scalar, yeah, we can talk about magnitude of a scalar, but here we are more interested in the vector quantity. Okay, so which of the following equations is a logical equation? Okay, so let's say yeah, so just try out this question and tell me your answers. So you have to just give me which options are logical and which options are illogical. Which of the following options are logical? More than one answer may be correct. Okay, so I'm still waiting for the correct answers, people. Yes, Ishita, that's correct. Yes, Hitanshu, that is correct. Harini, that's correct. Okay. All right, so let me put it up on the board here. Yes, Veronica, correct. Very good. So here we'll see this is a correct thing. Okay, because we are equating a scalar with a magnitude. This is correct because we are equating the magnitude of a vector as a magnitude. This is correct because we are equating a vector giving its magnitude and direction. But this one is becoming wrong. Why this one is wrong? Because the left hand side is a vector, okay, and the right hand side is a scalar. It is magnitude only. Okay, so we cannot put an equal symbol between them. Okay, so we cannot equate a vector with the scalar quantity. Okay, but this is correct because this is a scalar quantity and its magnitude only is given. Okay, this is okay because this is magnitude of the vector. Okay, the left hand side, whereas the right hand side is magnitude. That's why this is fine. Okay, now here you can see the left hand side is a vector, and on the right hand side we have equated it with the magnitude and direction both. So it's a legal operation. Okay, but the first one is an illegal operation because left hand side has a vector quantity and right hand side has only magnitude. Okay, now sometimes in shorthand notation, so just one final thing over here we'll understand. So apart from this example, here itself we'll understand one thing, that in shorthand the magnitude of a vector is often written as this only. So we might replace mod of vector A with just the symbol A without the vector sign on it. But that's shorthand notation. Okay, the proper notation is this one. If we mean magnitude of a vector, we should write the vector symbol with the mod sign placed on top of it. Okay, people. So hope this was clear so far. Okay. So we come to the conclusion of today's lecture. Okay, hope you people have followed most of the things at least. Please do a revision of the lecture notes when I send it to you, and the revision of your own lecture notes. And you can send me a personal WhatsApp message on the same number in which I'm there in the group if you have any doubt with any part, especially in the lecture notes while revising. If something is not clear, you can take a picture of that part and send it to me on WhatsApp, and I'll explain it to you. That way, you'll be prepared before the next lecture happens. Okay. Otherwise, things are simple. I'll also send you the recording. Today's lecture is introductory lecture, so you will not get a homework sheet, but I will send you the module which has the vectors chapter. It's called Useful Mathematics of Physics. So from that module, you can start reading the first few pages. And there is something called in chapter exercise in that, which has very less number of questions. So the first or second in chapter exercise will be similar to some of the questions we've discussed today. So if you are itching to do some questions, you can try that out. Otherwise, next lecture onwards, your full-fledged assignments will start. Okay, so that will take you the time. Okay, we have to learn a few more things in vectors next time before we can start doing some assignment type of questions. Today is like more just an introduction to understand what is vectors about and how to notate and represent them. So if you just revise today's lecture, it is more than enough. You will be prepared for the next lecture. Okay, so that's it for today, people. All the best and thanks for attending.